Welcome, you evil insectoids. My name is DasTactic. Welcome to the channel. We're going to be looking today at Boskarans. We're going to be sort of going through what they do well, what they don't do well as well. All sorts of different things with the actual Boskarans. They're a really fun faction to play. These are my second favourite faction to play after the Actarians, to be honest. I really enjoy a Boskarian run because nobody likes you, and you've got to play very aggressively to play effectively as the Boskarans, and they're really cool fun. So anyway, let's just go through what they do. So the Boskarans are a ferocious insectoid race with a tough brown exoskeleton skin. Now these are the ferocious insectoid race. Actually, maybe not. The Shakturi, which is sort of like if you played the original Distant Worlds, the Shakturi was an even more evil insectoid race, which we know from a leak that was sort of mentioned that the Shakturi are being worked on again to be brought into the game later on in the year, in 2023. Hopefully it'll be at the end of the year. So there will be some Shakturi action, but the Boskara essentially were the closest to the Shakturi in the original game, and these are, at this point in time, by far the most ferocious of the factions in the game. And so we'll just read a bit more. They are the most violent and aggressive race in the known galaxy. They excel in combat using trickery and deceit to gain the upper hand. Boskara are untrustworthy allies. So the Boskarans' instinctive lust for conquest and expansion is without equal. Most other races consider them to be completely without scruples and thus steer well clear of them. However, Boskara have a natural ally in the Slukan. They're slightly more reasonable close relatives. Now, the Slukan were another faction. I used to love playing the Slukan in the original game. They haven't been added to this game yet. I don't know when they're going to be coming. It's not this year, I don't believe. So we'll be looking forward to the Slukans coming at some point in the future. They are a fun faction to play as well. So I guess, you can't have everything. Anyway, this is... let's have a look at their personality traits. These are very aggressive. Plus 40 is by far the highest in the galaxy. This just means that they're likely to just fly off the handle, become super enraged, and just do crazy things. Combine that with their recklessness, which means that they don't consider risk anything with what they do much, is that they're likely to jump at the slightest slight against them. So anything that sort of comes up against them that they don't like, they're going to respond negatively. They're also, with that combination, likely to attack you even without having war or anything. They're none of the niceties. They're just going to essentially just do what they do, and you just have to put up with it. They are not good neighbours. Having a Boskara neighbour, if you are playing one of the other factions, means that you're going to have troubles. If I'm playing one of the other factions, in fact, I'll talk a bit more, and then we'll come back down to one of the things that I tend to find that I have to do with them. So anyway, their dependability, very unreliable. So these do not stick in treaties for very long at all. They will with other Boskarans. Like if there's other Boskarans around, they tend to form a collective, like a hive mind type collective of Boskaran empires, and they do tend to then look after themselves, which is actually interesting. So if you've got multiple Boskarans, try to keep them separate if you can, because when they do combine, they become even more powerful. So, but everyone else, they're extremely unreliable. Their reproduction rate is rapid, so they reproduce very quickly at +8. This is the fastest, I think, in the galaxy. The Tikans are +7, yeah. So the Boskarans are even faster than them at reproducing, which means that their colonies grow quickly. They don't care whether they migrate to other colonies or not. They don't really mind at all. And their assimilation rate, they're very resistant to assimilating. So if you're attacking a Boskaran world, it's going to take a long time to have them assimilate into your society. They can be done, but it just takes forever. Which is why, quite often, I just bombard them. Even if I'm playing a relatively good faction, I would try to bombard and destroy them, almost like Starship Troopers sort of approach. These are the bugs, these are the insectoids. They must be completely eradicated from the galaxy. They're very dangerous to fight against, but they're fun to play as, because you're not going to have any friends unless you find another Boskara. Okay, so colonization suitability. They love volcanic worlds at +40. They have a now you'll see here the quality threshold. We've seen this in other when we've hovered over different things. The quality threshold has been 50%, and so this is they've got instead of a 50% quality threshold. Actually, it's sort of funny because this is actually they've got the 40 with the plus 30. It's usually would be the 50 with the plus 20. Anyway, whatever it might actually end up being, it's sort of a weird sort of plus 40 back and through there. This one here is another plus 30 back and through there. It's a dark art, the way that the colonization does work. I will do a video on that at some point. Carbonaceous worlds as well. So volcanic, sulfur, volcanic, and carbonaceous are the three types that they do like. Then there's all the other ones they actually have. Like this is that 50% quality threshold with a negative being applied to it as well. And so that's sort of it's interesting the way it sort of does work. So they really don't settle much on anything other than very, very hot planets is what they actually do like to have. Now their bonuses, they're very good at weapon research, but they're not very good at much else, and you'll find this when we actually sort of get into it. Their war weariness reduction, they can stay in wars for an extremely long period of time, more so than anybody else. Their ground attack strength goes up a little bit. Their mining rate is high as well. These are insects. These are ants, essentially. These are space ants. Weapons damage increase is also up as well. But their diplomacy, as you can sort of gather from the personality, they're not very diplomatic. If you're starting at pre-warp, they're going to have the early torpedo weapons. They're going to have ground combat and early pulse weapons. They have unique tech, which they've got a torpedo weapon, a firestorm torpedo. They've got plasma blasters. They get these very early on in the game, and these are really quite powerful beam weapons that they end up having. And so the plasma blaster does come fairly early. They also have this flux armor, which is sort of like a exoskeleton for their ships, a bit like what they themselves actually have. And so they've got these different sorts of armors that they can then have on their actual ships as well. We'll have a look at that when we get into the game. Race victory conditions, again, this for me really does give you a flavour of how the game expects you to play as them. So destroy the most enemy ships and bases in the galaxy. Exterminate or enslave the most people in the galaxy, control the most homeworlds, yours and others in the galaxy, and destroy the most enemy troops in the galaxy. So it's all about destruction, enslavement, and extermination. So that's essentially what you're all about. That's all you care about. Now, the preferred governments that they actually have is a hive mind and a military dictatorship. It does say that they can be republic, democracy, feudalism, monarchy, and these other things as well. I personally don't think they should be in there. I think they should be removed from the list because they're not the sort of faction that should be having access. They don't. It doesn't mix well with them. These are more diplomatic. I've never seen the game choose them at all. I've only ever seen Hive Mind. Hive Mind is very, very powerful for the Boskara. Now their troops are actually fairly weak in combat. Like it's sort of like where they've got masses of them and they just have to go in with heaps and heaps of troops. But overall, their actual strength, their combat strength is fairly weak at 135 and 203. If we compare that to our vanilla, the human troops are 120 and 180. So we've got something that is actually it's a bit above the humans. It's not. It's actually it is high. We compare that to the Mortallans, which is the highest. Yeah, they're only slightly under. So no, I got that one wrong. The Boskaran troops are powerful. They are very, very powerful. Not quite as powerful as the Mortallan troops, but above everything else in the game so far. Now, the most liked races, and they don't like them all that much, -20 for the Spiders, the Daoits, the Gizareans, which will be coming in the next sort of racial DLC. Gizareans, they don't mind at -30. They're actually a fun faction to play, and the Slukans as well. So they're their closest friends at this point in time. The most disliked races are the Akdarians at -100, the Kydians, and the Ikaru. You can put the humans in there as well, essentially, as along with the Teekans and a few. Everyone basically will be down here at -100. I should actually make a little chart that actually sort of shows what they think of each other. I think they even have like a slightly negative trait towards themselves. We don't see it. We used to see it in the game. It used to give us a full list. It doesn't do that anymore. But I think that there was a slight change I think they had like a -5 or -10 with other Boskarans. But anyway, it was sort of funny. I don't know if it still is in the game. I'll have to check that. That's why I'm thinking I should actually make a little chart for people to download and sort of do this. So by the time this is uploaded, I'll try to do something like that, just so you can actually do a full comparison of all of the actual races in the galaxy. I'll try to get that one done. So if it is done, it'll be in the description. If it's not done, then it'll be on my to-do list, along with all sorts of other things. All right, let's get into the game, and actually the government types here. Actually, I'll just get into the game, and then we'll go through the difference between the military dictatorship and the hive mind. I think it was military dictatorship that they preferred. Yes, it was. Okay, we'll get into the game. All right, so here we are on our little volcanic planet. We'll just go across into empires. We'll then go to government, and we'll compare the hive mind with the military dictatorship. So we can sort of see through here, population growth for the hive mind goes up even higher, even though they're actually a race that actually does reproduce quickly. They reproduce even quicker with the hive mind. Military dictatorship is actually a bit slower. The war weariness reduction is +20 for the hive mind. If you go for the military dictatorship, you actually do even better. Like, you can actually sort of stay in wars even longer. Counter-espionage, both of them are good at sort of stopping spies from getting in, because it is a closed society. They've got diplomacy is -20 for hive mind and -10 for military dictatorship. All research is -15. This is actually really hard. This one aspect of being a hive mind is really hard for the Boskarans to break into some of the techs, and I'll try to show you that. If I can show you that, I will, because it does make it extremely difficult to break into some of these techs that you would hope would be available to you fairly early. Which is great, because it really again flavors the play of playing as a Boskaran. You don't have the access to the higher tier. Not that you can go along the tech tree, but going back through the other, like going and trying to get something that's a bit more nuanced. The Boskarans don't have access to that. They have basic stuff, and they just have to use brute force to do the best with what they have. Colony happiness is going to go right up, because they're under the control of the Queen. And whereas military dictatorship, it goes back the other way. Troop recruitment rate isn't as high as a military dictatorship, but is still good. Recovery rates are not as good as military dictatorship, but still actually reasonable. The savings of troops, the military dictatorship is much more about planetary invasions. You can sort of see through here, whereas the hive mind is it's still got savings. The colony corruption reduction, a hive mind, they know what you're thinking. They know what you're likely to do. So this dramatically reduces the colony corruption for a hive mind. So this is actually worth a lot. Hive minds are a really good government type. What they're not good at is research, and that's the one thing where they really do suffer. But everything else is pretty good. Tourism income is way down. It's even worse for the military dictatorship. We've got the ship maintenance savings. Wow, actually that's really cool for the military dictatorship, not so much for the hive mind. The facilities as well, they've got savings there, same as with the military dictatorship. Trade income is terrible. It's not as bad for the military dictatorship. And then their weapons research is just normal. These then go up. So if you are playing the game and you're thinking, God, I really need a tech, I need to break into that tech, you may want to, if it's early enough, go and actually change from a hive mind across into a military dictatorship, get the tech, and then bounce back again just to get the other benefits. So you can mix and match the game by changing your government. I don't like to do it whenever I'm playing the game. It's not something that I try to do too much. Now, the leadership terms that you can see through here, the leader typically will be in the game, the whole game that you're playing, 1,000 years. If they are taken out, it's disruptive at -10, and that'll be through direct appointment. And it'll just be any of the characters in the Empire will then take over the Queen role or the Emperor role in this sort of instance. For a military dictatorship, every 60 years there's going to be some sort of coup d'etat, very disruptive, so highly disruptive. This is going to then lead to... so you may want to really consider carefully if you do flick between the two, it will actually cause these sorts of disruptions, and probably even more. And again, the military dictatorship will just choose from admirals and generals. Now, the startup situation, if you are playing pre-warp, you do start with improved logistics, and you actually do start with long-range sensors. You know, actually, that's damn good. because you don't get that if you choose tech level 1, for example, because long range sensors are in the tech level 2 range, and so it's only pre-warp, and you actually go straight for that one there. And that's actually one of the ones that is missing if you start at tech level 1, that is very hard to break into as the Boskara. If you started off as that one, that's actually very, very good for them. You know, I hadn't realised that before, but that is actually really massive. That really does make the hive mind something worth using right from the start. Actually, having that sort of view on the empires. Now, over the military dictatorship, we have the improved escorts, which is great. The patrol starships as well. That's the frigates and shock forces. Again, that's very good as well. To start off with frigates is pretty massive, and also with the improved escorts. Both of these actually do make a big difference. I love this. I love how nuanced the combination of race along with government, sort of the way it mixes and matches things. So anyway, that's what we've got. Now you can see there at the moment we've got the all research is -15. Let's have a look and see what that means in terms of research. So if we just go back across, we can then have a look at the actual at what they do. So if we go back down and have a look, for example, at things like the I'll just go down to the actual sensors, which are down here. I don't know if it'll sort of show us. Yeah, long range scanners are here. So this is 0. So 0 and then 1. If you start at tech level 1, you actually do miss out on the long range scanners. Now it says the requirements. See how the research threshold is 20% sensor research, and from all other areas for us, we have -14, 0 from sensor research, and plus -15 from the all research. So playing as a hive mind, we get that -15%, which means that we actually technically can't break into that. But if you do start off as a hive mind in the pre-warp, you get that one for free, which is great. So I would actually probably even think, well, starting in the pre-warp for the Boskara is actually a good idea, because you will then get that one straight away, and that's because otherwise you're not going to break into it. If you start on tech level 1 and have all of these, that won't be available to you, and then you'll have to try to find other ways to make the gap to then build it up to get that 20%. You've actually got to come back. The research threshold is 20%. Your research is not just 0, and you have got to make the 20%. Yours is down even further at another -15. You have to make up 35% in sensor research to be able to actually go and search this one, or you have to then steal it or somehow trade for it. Probably pre-warp. I'm now sort of thinking pre-warp is a good start for the Boskara. Now, what do they actually get? Their actual things that they get is all up in here. They end up with the flux-hardened armor. This is special armor that they end up having. And so this actually just gives them better ratings. So if you look at this, we've got a rating of 86 and a reactive rating of 5 compared to the high-density alloys back and through this side. Plus, you actually skip past this one as well. So you've ended up with like ratings of 72. This one was 86. This one here is 86 for the enhanced armor, but reactive rating of only 4. So it is better armor all the way around, and the iron sheath armor has the rating of 65 with the reactive rating of 5. Reactive rating is sort of like it is applied to every attack that comes in. It sort of takes that amount off, and so by having the flux hardened armor, you're getting the best of both. You're getting the best of the iron sheath armor and the enhanced armor as well, all in one package, and you're just going straight there. So aiming for that one fairly early on is a good idea, I think, for the Boskara. They also have up near the top here the beam that they end up getting, which is also very, very good. Which is this one through here, the devastating plasma charge. Now the Dayots also have access to this one, and so sorry, that's the Firestorm torpedo. That's not the one I was thinking of. I was looking for beams. This one here, the hybrid plasma weapons. This one is early. This is only tech level 1, but this is actually a very, very powerful blaster weapon. So a beam weapon that is good on their ships. And so you do want to make use of that. If you're playing as the Boskara, go for that one and start to deck out your ships with these plasma blasters. It does make a difference. They are very, very good. You then also do actually have access to the, as we saw there before, these plasma charges, which is the torpedoes. These I don't tend to use much, to be honest. I tend to sort of use the plasma blasters a lot. They would be good, but I just haven't used them much, to be honest. Like, they're not sort of something I aim for, because I've got other things to aim for with the Boskara. I'm trying to, for example, get. Usually I'm not worrying about these at all. We'll have a quick look and see what they end up having. But if we go through, I like to get the destroyers as fast as I can. These are quite powerful for the Boskarans. And then you've, like, pretty much, once you start to go into your light cruisers, you can see there the hangar, they've only got one hangar slot. The destroyers have got 0 hangar slots. System patrol ships, so they do not make use of hangars and fighter craft, so don't bother. If you're with the Boskarans, you're not going to be fighting like the Actarians, but if you're fighting the Actarians and they are bringing a lot of small craft, make sure you really deck out your ships with heaps and heaps of point defense, because that's how you're going to have to you're going to have to shoot them down. You're not going to have any small craft yourself, or not much small craft, to be able to really sort of make much of a difference there. By the time you get your dedicated carriers, you're getting 4 hangar bays rather than the 5 from the Actarians, so it's still not nowhere near as good, but you can start to compete once you get up to there. But by that stage, you're probably really sort of more focused on capital ships or something like this, where you're getting like battle cruisers, something big and meaty with other weaponry, and just find other ways to sort of mitigate the fighters if you are fighting the Actarians. But for most other factions, it's just brute strength, brute power. And we'll have a look at the different ships now and sort of see how they actually operate. So if we just go across into the ship designs and just go to add new, I'll just keep this on state ships. We are doing it by role. So the very first ship you're going to get is the Escort if you are playing pre-warp. We'll have a quick look at this guy through here. You can see there it's got 2 large slots. So it's already ahead of any other Escort in terms of its firepower, and it's got the 2 defenses, 2 engines. It's suitable. It's a good little guy. If we just go to manually design, these have got 2 that face 180 degrees from the front. These are both 120 degree. It's 120 size, so they can house large weapons. They're not designed to protect themselves. So all of the actual Boskaran ships are a bit like this. And so they've got the 2 mounts in through there, and so these can then fire pretty much anywhere from the front 90 degrees with both weapons. And so in this case, probably railguns are a good choice here, or those plasma beams. They're also a good choice as well for this particular ship. If we go and have a bit of a look, I'll just see what the plasma beams actually are. Maybe a little bit hard. I'll just do it by category. And I'll have a bit of a look and see if we can figure out where they actually are. I mean, I'm sort of too far down into the mix of things, so just give us an idea of size. So the railguns, the medium railguns are 26. The plasma blasters are 20. So these are much smaller. These are suitable for these sorts of ships. So this is why you want to go for those small-sized but high-hitting weapons. And in fact, these could take, if there's a large version of that, they could actually take one of those as well. There's a small. Can't see if there's a large. Anyway, it's this is certainly putting those sorts of plasma beams on is going to help a lot with the actual with keeping the size down, which means you can then sort of deck it out better with the speed and also with the protections. But this is not a ship that protects itself. So just be aware that at this point in time we've gotten 0 point defense on this ship, and you probably don't want this ship to have the point defense. So that's your standard Escort. Let's just go and cancel out of that one. We'll just go and have a quick look at the other 2 Escorts. Like the Patrol Escort is a faster Escort, a bigger Escort. Just manually designed. This one has actually got a smaller gun at the front. It's got a small and a large. So it actually bypasses its weapon mounts for speed, so it can actually sort of put more engines on. It's probably not that useful, to be honest, in that sort of capacity, because it's that sort of really is saying, hey, I want a point defense weapon here. But in reality, you probably do want to have the full-on grunt attacks of the other types of the other sorts of Escorts. If we just go and cancel and have a quick look at the heavy will probably have even more going for it. So we just go to the heavy Escort. Yeah, 2 and 1. Here we go. This will be the one that we'd be aiming for. And so this is actually fairly cool. This one's only got like a small 90-degree slot in the middle there, and it's only it's a medium, so you still could get away with having a beam weapon, like a beam weapon on there, and even one of these big ones just waste the space and just use a point defense on that. So you could, if you wanted to, put a point defense, but in reality I'd probably be going for this heavy and just decking it out with beam weapons. Have as many beam weapons on here as you possibly could, or rail guns, and just go for it really, and don't worry about the defenses. So these will not be able to defend themselves against missiles or anything like that. So these, as I say, the Boskaran, just the whole approach of the Boskarans is just to come in and bash things, and if they take a bit of damage, they take a bit of damage. That sort of seems to be sort of the way that it tends to want to be played that way. If you compare some of the other videos that I've done on other factions, I think you'll sort of see the difference between each faction. Each faction is so clearly defined in Distant Worlds 2 compared to Distant Worlds 1. It's incredibly good. Like it really is so exciting to play every single faction because of these differences. And so that's our escorts. Let's have a look at our frigate. So at the moment, in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, my escorts are heavy hitting small ships. They're going to be very, very fast. I need some way to stop the any fighter craft that is coming through. So you can see why the Actarians do so well against the Boskarans. The Boskarans just can't really defend themselves all that well with those small ships. Let's go across and add a new frigate. Have a quick look at that one. So we'll just have a quick look. And this is a 3 and 2, so this was getting a lot more weaponry on it. And again, if we have a look at everything that's firing backwards. 0, zip, nothing at all. Everything fires to the front. And very, very narrowed fields of fire as well. Now, what you can do is there are point defense guns or point defense weapons that you can use that are seeking, and so I would probably tend to use those in here. They're not as effective as the beams, but I would be looking to put a couple of the seeking missiles, the point defense missiles, in there, and then as well, just sort of keeping this one like a bit of an extended version of the other. Of essentially those heavy escorts with what we then have at the front. So we've got 3 heavy mounts at the front there. Again, it's we've got the 180 degrees that can. So these can actually 2 of these can fire, all the way through from 90. The front 90 degrees can fire with all 3. So again, I like the idea of coming in close with the Boskarans. So rail guns or those plasma beams, probably the plasma beams just to keep the size down. Some sort of point defense there, but it would have to be seeking. If it was such narrow fields of fire, it's very, very restricted, very restricted. But it's got a lot more firepower than the Actarian ships in terms of weapon mounts. It's just that the weapon mounts aren't as globally useful as the Actarian weapon mounts, which have got that 360 on top. If you remember from that episode, if you watch that episode. The humans also aren't great with theirs, but these are even worse in terms of protecting the back of the ships. And so if any small craft can get in behind these ships, they can rip them apart because they've got no protection. So unless they do actually have like a missile point defense weaponry. So that's the frigates. Let's have a look at the destroyers. The destroyers where it starts to sort of all come together. So if we have a look at the destroyer and through this side, again, we don't have any hangar bays and through this side. Just go and have a look at this particular one. Now we have a 360 slot up top there. That has to be used for point defense. Now, if you have the other small craft, you may also then be looking for other ways of enhancing your point defense. And so you may want to use these for those as well. Just 2 little weapons mounts at the bottom there. We've got, like, again, a lot of weapon mounts. You've still got a lot of weapon mounts at the top here. So you've got sort of like two 180s and the 90, similar to the other sorts of ships. But at least you have the protection here of the sentinel beams or anything else you want to have as point defense. So that does make a massive difference with these guys. It gives them all-round protection, which none of the previous ships actually have. The other ships are all about just going in and just mixing it up with the enemy and doing as much damage as they possibly can. This one can be used that same way as well, but it does actually have that extra protection. So that's your destroyers. This is where the Boskaran start to become their fleets become more useful if you're playing them. But again, extremely narrow fields of fire, except for this one weapon mount up the top. That's the first 360 that we've seen with the Boskaran so far. Let's just go and cancel. We'll go and have a quick look at the light cruiser through here as well. And so just going to have a bit of a look. These are, again, we're sort of looking at we do actually have a couple of rear-facing mounts in sort of like in different sort of positions on the actual ship itself. So we can actually put some point defense back there if we wanted to. This does have a 360 at the top there as well. And then we've got heaps and heaps of weaponry at the front through here. So again, it's all about firing from the front. This is a much, much bigger ship, of course, so there's heaps of weapon mounts. When you compare this to any other faction, these guys are just they're decked out to just be having weapons everywhere, which does make the ships actually quite difficult. Again, if you're playing as the Actarians, you've got to use your small craft to sort of pull these ships apart in space, because like before they get to your ships, once these weapons get to actual spaceships, you're in a lot of trouble. So and for every other faction, they really are a handful because of how much weaponry they can bring in. From there, it really just keeps on getting bigger and better for the Boskarans in terms of their battle cruisers, their battleships. I mean, if we have a quick look at the tech tree, and just finish that off with that, I think it's sort of they are a fun faction to play. They're not an easy faction in terms of if you do come up against a fighter craft, because they don't do well against them. If we have a bit of a look, and see where the natural progression is of these things. So we've got like the capital ships is going to be the battle cruisers, 10 large, 8 standard weapon slots. The fleet command ships are the battleships themselves, 11 and 8. And then the mega capital ships with the heavy battleships have got 12 and 8. So a lot of firepower. The weapons range increases plus 50% on these. Damage increases plus 10%, and shield recharge rate is plus 50. So once you get up to these late game ships, you're talking mass destruction with what they can actually then go and do. So anyway, that's the Boskarans. A fun faction to play. You're not going to have any friends when you play as them, so forget about diplomacy. You really are just there to cause damage and cause havoc in the galaxy. You do need to have you need to have big fleets to be able to then sort of really smash your way around around your area of space. And you expand essentially through invasions. You're very good at invading as well. So it's a really fun faction to play, particularly if you're wanting a very, very violent game. The Boskarans, the Insectoids, fantastic. I'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. Hope you've been enjoying this series so far. Please consider liking and subscribing if you do enjoy it, and I'll catch you next time.